you're a strong leader, and I think there's going to be I know there are going to be a lot of young leaders, aspiring leaders watching and listening to this. What advice would you give to them on how they need to interact with and honor their leader that's above them? If it's a strong leader and I'm not talking good or bad leader, just they got a strong leader and they want to influence their leader in a positive way, build that relationship, hopefully grow to get more opportunity. What's the best way for a young leader to interact with a leader above them?
We've learned to invite conflict. Not all organizations do that, but we enjoy conflict because that means people are saying what they think, and you can also solve for the conflict going away. But if you never know it's there, you can't solve for it. Provide honor and say, okay, look, don't have as many years at this as you do, but here's what I'm seeing, and I'm confused about this a little bit. Help me understand why we're going that way, because I really want to plug into this, and I've got, I see over here what's going on, and I don't know if that's right or not. Help me work through this. Help me get aligned on this. And somebody asking questions like that, I'll talk to you all day long. Or they go, hey, at the last place, we did it this way, and here's why. Why are we doing it this way at Ramsey? It's a different way. This thing, this technique, this process, this system. And sometimes the answer is, because we're stupid and your way's better, so why don't you teach us that? That's a good answer from a leader. They got to look up and go, well, you're better. Yeah, you just brought some help from the other place that you used to work at. That's great. You added value today. I think if it's not belligerent, a leader that is confident invites help. Because if you want a bunch of clones running around, there's nothing, people doing the exact same thing with no independent thought whatsoever to add value, then the organization's beginning to die immediately. It's called bureaucrats. Principles don't change. Processes should always change. If it's the opposite, you're a bureaucrat. If processes are worshipped and principles don't matter, then that's a bureaucrat. You're working at the DMV, and so no one's allowed to think anymore. There's no thought required. It's robotic. But we have a principle here. And as long as we stay on that principle, then I don't care how we do it. I mean, when we started, the internet wasn't there. There wasn't a podcast. There wasn't a YouTube, for God's sakes. There wasn't anything. It was talk radio on AM in your car was how we were getting the word out. And so certainly processes have changed. But what's the principle? Excellent communication with storytelling and humor, and in a winsome way that's attractive so that people can learn something and their life gets transformed, and in the process they meet God. That's the same principle that we started with. That principle is not going to change. If you try to change that principle, you got a real fight on your hands around here. But everybody's aligned on that. But they go, a guy walks in my office, in 2003, and he goes, we need a podcast. And I'm like, what's a podcast? I never heard of that. He goes, well, a couple people are doing them. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean anything. What's a podcast? He goes, it's a thing on the internet. I'm like, people are listening on audio on the internet? Really? And he goes, yeah, Cuban just sold broadcast.com for $11 billion. You ought to check it out.
Wow.
I was, yeah, okay. That's how long ago it was.
I remember that too.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, that's the birth of a Cuban. Yeah, there we go. So, but yeah, and so broadband wasn't even widely dispersed at this point. It was still dial-up, dial-up and 14.4 or whatever it was. But you could still get audio. It was a little bit Mickey Mousey. And so we jump in, we start doing podcast and put an hour on for free. And people are like, in the radio business, they're like, oh no, you have to charge for this. I'm like, no, we're just going to put it on. It's not, it's a nuanced anomaly. It may not even last. Here we are.
Yeah, exactly.